Is free will really free will if we're punished for disobeying or not believing in God's word?
All right. I think so. I think so. Every person in prison right now, let's assume, and only God knows this ultimately, but assume that they had free will in doing what they did to get them in prison. It may have been a genetic thing or a sociological thing or an insanity thing or whatever, but God knows that. But let's assume that, in fact, there's a person who says, gosh, I really would like to have that car. It's not mine. It belongs to somebody else, but I want it. I would like to steal it, but maybe I shouldn't. And there's a choice there. He decides of his own free will to steal the car. He gets caught and gets thrown into prison or whatever may happen to him. He's punished for what he did, but he still had free will. And so I think that punishment is perfectly compatible with having free will. Free will doesn't mean that you get off the hook for what you do. There's always consequences for what you do. And I think the way God sets up the universe, it's basically that the choices we make, he tells us the consequences of them, and basically the consequences are just the natural outgrowth of the choices we make. And ultimately it comes down to this. If you reject God, you're rejecting the one who is life itself, love itself, beauty itself, truth itself, all that makes life worth living, you're rejecting. The consequences of that is misery and what the Bible calls hell. And so he warns us about those consequences, but we can go down that road if we want. The way we go down that road is by telling ourselves a story that maybe it won't be like that. The guy who steals the car, he's living in a story of his own fantasy where he says, well, maybe I won't get caught. Maybe I'll live happily ever after with this car. And so you live in that story, and you roll the dice, and you go for it. But if you get caught, then you pay the consequences. What God's telling us is that sooner or later you'll get caught. And so he wants us to trust him on this. He has our best interest in mind. So I don't think free will is incompatible at all with there being consequences for the choices that we make.
All right.
In fact, if there were no consequences for the choices we make, if there were no consequences for the choices we make, then our choices couldn't possibly have moral significance. Think about it, right?